Well, here's a question that comes kind of out of taking workshops and taking classes, that sort of thing. This one is, how can I remember what colors to mix to get a particular color? I watch lots of painting videos and I get overwhelmed trying to jot down their combinations for colors. I have some answers for that one. Yes, that can be very, very frustrating. Someone is doing a lesson or whatever, and they say, okay, mix this and this and this to get this. Well, that sure is a lot to remember, and sure is a lot of thumbing around, thumbing through pages to do if you're trying to rediscover, again, a note you made about what somebody used to mix to get a certain color. Hey, there's an easier way, a much easier way now. So what do you want to do? Spend all of your time thumbing through notes to find that particular combination that somebody used? Or do you want to be able to look at any color and be able to mix it? So a lot of what I teach has to do with just that. So I think it's a really important thing for, first of all, let's begin to recognize colors by their hue names. Now I'm going to show you a process for finding the color and knowing what to do to mix the color so that you never have to again remember another formula. First of all, when you buy your color wheel from any of the art supply stores, you're probably going to get a color wheel that has a whole bunch of stuff on the inside of it. Little computers and things like that. You don't need that crap. Take an X-Acto knife and cut all that out so that all you have left are the colors themselves around the color wheel. So there's the first thing. If you're not willing to do that, then go to our website and download a free copy of the color wheel, of my color wheel, and then you will need to be able to print it so you get the accurate colors. Again, you're going to cut this inside out. I'm going to show you why. Most of you who are used to working with me already know why we do that. Because we're using the color wheel as a guide to help us to identify color. We've got to be able to identify if we want to know what to do to mix it. All right, so that being done, here's how we use that. And I'll use this little color wheel. I could use either one of these. They're going to get the same results no matter what. The next thing, when we're trying to, when we see a color we want to mix. So we could I just use this photo. There are millions of photos. I could have used any of them, or it doesn't matter what, because it works the same no matter what subject. Works the same with portraiture, works the same with animals, works the same with landscape, seascape, doesn't matter what, it's color. It works the same with acrylics, with oils, with watercolor, with pastel, with gouache. It doesn't matter, it's color. Color works the same. It's the technique that you use for the medium that's the variation. All right. So let's just say we're going to try to cut the color. Let's say, all right, if you have this color of a hayfield, and most people say, oh, yellow ochre, and they reach for yellow ochre. You're going to be starting a guessing game right then. First of all, the color is going to vary according to the photograph you have. Some photographs will interpret the colors that we see in one direction. Other photographs will interpret another. The monitors are going to interpret them. So learn to mix the color you're looking at. And once you learn to mix the color you're looking at, then you can learn how to vary that to lean it in another direction. So what are we looking for here? Well, let's just start with what is the hue that you're looking at. Don't call it color, call it hue, and there's a reason for that. What is the hue? And let's just say I'm looking right up in here, and I want to know how to mix that color. So I can start with the color wheel, and this is where we begin to use this wonderful little tool. We can start by just putting the color wheel beside this, and we can rotate and compare what we're seeing here with what we're seeing there until we get very close to where we can see this has some of this in it, or we can feel it has more of this in it than anything else. Now you can see the yellow-green wouldn't be it, because you don't see any of the yellow-green in there. You might see a little bit of the yellow in there, so keep that in mind. Do you see more of the yellow-orange in there? See, it's getting closer, beginning to feel more like we might see this color in here. We could keep rotating, but we would come back, and I would say stop right there where it feels you see more of that color in it. Now, that's the hue, yellow-orange. But you see, that doesn't look like that. No, it doesn't, not quite. But what do we know about yellow-orange? We know that if we mix blue-violet into yellow-orange, it's going to reduce the intensity or the saturation, and it's going to begin to look more like what you know to be yellow ochre. So let's try that little experiment and see what happens. So we'll start with we can start with a yellow-orange itself just to do the experiment. So we have the yellow-orange right here. That's the yellow-orange. And let's see, do we have the value? Well, the value you can see there seems to be a little bit darker. Actually, the yellow-orange there seems to be a little bit more red, but let's just stick with that and see where it goes. If we mix the complement blue-violet with yellow-orange, we should be able to reduce the intensity. In other words, we should be able to get very, very close to what we're looking at right there. Now let's do that. So first of all, I want to have a value. Let's see, we said blue-violet. Okay, here is blue. That's ultramarine blue. And here is a red-violet. Let's add that to it until we get blue-violet. This is very, very dark, so that won't work yet. So that then identifies to us the next step, which is value corrected. In other words, get the color, get the hue the same value before you start mixing. And I'm going to do that with white. So we'll just put enough white in here to get this a similar value in the same value range. We want to keep it in that blue-violet. And this is still a little bit dark, so let's add a little bit more of the white into it. You see what I'm doing? This is a step. I'm taking you through a step-by-step process of thinking. The hue first. If the hue needs to be darker or lighter, you would adjust the value. But most likely the hue is going to be a different saturation. In this case, you can see the hue is duller. You might say duller, or you might say more neutral, but you can tell it needs some adjustment. Then let's adjust the value first so that we can keep it within that range. So with the blue-violet, now let's pull the yellow-orange, pull a little of this blue-violet into yellow-orange, and let's just take it a little bit at a time and see what we get. All right, so I'll get that. Now watch this. It's going to be like magic. I can put that on the back of my color of my knife, and you see I'm getting closer. It's getting much closer to what we're seeing right there. I pull a little bit more, and let's go a little bit more aggressively, because that's pretty neutral. That hue is pretty neutral. And you can see we're getting it right there. It's feeling more red. What we're seeing on the photo is feeling a little bit more red. So that tells us then that the red-orange is really the yellow-orange is really a little bit more orange than it is yellow-orange. So we'll just add a little bit more of the red into it. You see? Did you see the logic I used there? And you see, there we are. We're right in that ballpark. Just a little bit more. And you see, there we go. Now, that then tells us that you can use that process of thinking where you identify the hue first, then identify the value, adjust the value, and then if it needs to be changed, sometimes when you identify the value after identifying the hue, you've already got it. And I'll show you one more in just a moment. I'm going to make this a little bit longer than usual, just one more to show you how that works. But the next thing to try, if it's leaning in another direction, then go to the next hue. But next thing to try is its complement. Does it need its complement added into it? If it does, then get the values the same or in a similar range first, gradually add the complement back in, and you will have it. Then you will know, you don't have to make a note of that. You know what to do when you bump into that hue or in that hue range. You know to call it by its hue name, yellow-orange, to use its complement, blue-violet, to change its saturation and adjust its value, and you're going to have it. You're going to be in that range. What about the blue? Now, people will often just refer to blue as blue, blue sky, blue sky. Well, all the hues tend to lean in one direction or the other. And we can see that blue sky, this blue sky, is not really blue so much as it's blue with a little bit of yellow in it. It means it's a little bit more towards blue-green. So you see that? Now, so look at how we can change that. If you call that blue, you just call this blue, and so we call this blue here for the moment to come up with the right color. Say, okay, what do I have that's blue? I'll have ultramarine blue, you might have phthalo blue, you might have cerulean blue. Just choose a blue. I'm going to choose the ultramarine blue because that's what I happen to have on the palette right now. So there's the blue. Let's put it right here. First thing, always adjust the value. So we see that blue's too dark. Let's add the white to get it lighter. You see the thinking process here. Call the hue, call the value, call the saturation. You call the hue, call the value, adjust those two, and then look for adjusting the saturation. It works every time, but it takes that little sequence of thinking and the identifying. Don't just guess at it, but it's identifying as a hue, not as ultramarine blue, not as phthalo blue, not as cerulean. In other words, not as the tube names, but as the hue names as they appear on the wheel, like that. It works every time. Now, so let's go just a little step further here. Blue. All right, so here's blue. Now let's get the value that we're looking at. So I'll just put that on the back of the palette knife and compare. Okay, I'm a little bit dark, so I'll get that just a little bit lighter. Well, it depends on what area I'm looking. Now I'm seeing, aha, you can see, can you see this blue is the same value, but you see it has a little bit more yellow in it, so it has more blue-green in it than it has ultramarine blue. It has a little bit more of the blue-green. So what do you do there? You have your options. You could just pull just a tiny bit of the yellow into it. That's one option. Let's just pull, I may have overdone that. Let's see if I did. Pull a little tiny bit of yellow into it, and I did overdo it. I thought so. Let's get a little bit more of the blue added to that. Didn't take much of that, and you can see, all right, get it a little bit lighter, and there I believe we must be, there we go. We're very close now. A little bit more of the yellow into it. You see, there's one way you can do that. You see, it's very, very close. Now, another thing you can do is to add a blue-green into it. For example, there's a blue-green I have that's called Viridian. So we have a little bit of the Viridian right here. And we have this adjusted value of the Viridian. You see it's a very ugly color when you add white into it. Let's see the value adjustment there. Now, let's see, where is that blue? Let's just pick it up from right here. All right, so if we add the Viridian mixture into it, it's the same principle, but we get a slight, there we go. See, we get it much closer to what we are going for there because that is a more transparent color and that can give us, there we are, we're in that vicinity right there. So learn your tube colors. Take your tube colors one at a time. Identify what their hue is, so that you'll know when you are finding what you need to create the color you're looking at, and you say to yourself you need blue violet, you'll know what to do to get the blue violet. Or blue green, you'll know what to do to the blue green. Now this is a very short and truncated version of a process that's going to always get you where you want to be in your color mixing without having to take notes and without having to remember formulas. Be sure and view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianeMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.